For nearly 10 years, Gisele Pelicot believed something was wrong with her body. She was constantly exhausted, she kept losing her memory, and she would wake up feeling strangely sore. Doctors said it might be stress, age, maybe even a neurological problem. But the truth was far worse, because while Giselle was unconscious in her own home, her husband, Dominic Pelicot, was secretly drugging her and inviting strangers over to assault her while she slept. Not once, not twice, but dozens of times. And the most terrifying part, she didn't even know what was happening to her. This is the case that shocked all of France. In 1971, when she was still young, she met a man named Dominic Pelicot. 2 years later, in April 1973, they married. The couple built a life together around the Paris metropolitan area. They had three children, a son named David, a daughter named Caroline, and later another son, Florian. Giselle worked in administration for the National Electricity Company, holding a steady job that supported the family. Dominic worked as an electrician and later tried his hand at real estate and several businesses. Most of them failed, and it was Giselle's stable career that largely kept the family financially secure. Like many long marriages, theirs wasn't perfect. In the mid 1980s, Giselle had an affair with a married colleague. The relationship caused the couple to separate for a time in 1987, even forcing them to sell their family home. But eventually they reconciled and continued their life together. A few years later, Dominic had an affair of his own, and he was staying with that woman for some time before returning to Giselle. In 2001, they even divorced for financial reasons, trying to protect their assets from Dominic's growing debts after several failed business ventures. Yet they continued living together and eventually remarried in 2007. From the outside, it looked like they had survived decades of ups and downs. By 2013, both of them had retired and were now living in a quiet village of Mazan in France. But behind the walls of that quiet home, something far darker was already beginning. Not long after they settled into their quiet life in the village, Giselle already began noticing small but troubling changes in her health. At first, it was easy to ignore. She felt more tired than usual. Not the kind of tired that disappears after a good night's sleep, but exhaustion that seemed to follow her everywhere. Then the memory problem started. She would forget simple things, conversations she had just had, plans that she made earlier that day. Sometimes she would walk into a room and forget why she was there. It began to scare her. Giselle started wondering that something serious was happening to her mind. She started worrying about Alzheimer's disease. She thought she was simply growing older, or maybe she was becoming lazy and unmotivated without even realizing it. But the symptoms didn't go away. She woke up feeling strangely sore, as if her body had gone through something that night. Her hair began thinning, and the constant exhaustion never seemed to leave. None of it made sense. She visited doctors, searching for answers. Blood tests were done, examinations followed, but nothing clearly explained what she was experiencing. So Giselle tried to push the fear aside and continue living her life. What she didn't know was that all these strange symptoms weren't because of some illness. It was happening inside her own home. And the person responsible for this was none other than the man she trusted the most. For years, Giselle couldn't explain what was happening to her. The exhaustion, the memory gaps, the strange feeling that entire nights of her life were simply missing. At one point, she even began to suspect her husband. She asked him directly if he had been drugging her, and Dominic denied it, and she believed him. Doctors had prescribed Giselle Temesta, which was a medicine used for sleep problems and anxiety. What she didn't know was that Dominic was secretly adding more sleeping pills into her foods and drinks. While she was unconscious, Dominic raped her. The first recorded attack happened in July 2011, while they were still living near Paris. But Dominic didn't stop there. Using online forums, he began contacting strangers, men he had never met before, and inviting them to his house while Giselle was drugged. Some of these men were strangers, others, disturbingly, were some people she had known in her everyday life, neighbors even. One neighbor paid to participate in her abuse, and Dominic filmed everything. All of it remained a secret for nearly a decade until in September 2020, something would happen that would finally expose the full truth. Dominic was arrested at a local supermarket after being caught filming under women's skirts. It seemed minor at first, but when police seized his phone and computer, they discovered more than 20,000 video files of men assaulting Giselle while she was unconscious. The investigation eventually implicated over 50 men in total. On November 2, 2020, Giselle was summoned to the police station. She thought it might have something to do with her husband's arrest. Instead, investigators began showing her the videos they had found. In that moment, the truth about the last 10 years of her life finally came crashing down. As Giselle later described it, everything caved in, everything I built for 50 years. Dominic Pelicot was later taken into custody. Even more disturbing, investigators learned that between his arrest in September and his detention in November, he had continued inviting men to the house while Giselle remained drugged and unaware. After his arrest, Giselle left the family home and filed for divorce. She would not see her husband again until his trial in September 2024. And as investigators continued digging into Dominic's past, even darker suspicions began to emerge. After the horrifying discovery of the more than 20,000 videos, the case against Dominic Pelicot sent shockwaves through France. But Giselle's ordeal didn't end with his arrest. Questions began to surface about how long this had been allowed to happen. French authorities launched an inquiry into failures by the police, failures which might have spared Giselle years of abuse. The failures were staggering, and the system had let her down long before Dominic's crimes were fully exposed. Years later, Giselle returned to the courtroom, this time in Nimes, for the retrial of a man who had appealed his rape conviction. She testified under her maiden name, Guillot, confronting the case and the system head on. The appeal was unsuccessful and the man's sentence was increased from 9 to 10 years. While giving evidence, Giselle spoke openly about her personal life since the original trial. She had become estranged from her daughter, who accused Dominic of being abusive and Giselle of not being supportive. She said she hoped they could one day reconcile, and she also left a message to the other rape victims that they should never feel ashamed of what was done to them. "I do not wish to be regarded as an icon," she told the court. "I want other victims to know they are not alone." Even after everything, Giselle reclaimed her voice, and with it, the power to turn a nightmare into a warning and a call for justice. What happened to Gisele Pelicot not only shocked the investigators, but also an entire nation. For over a decade, the man she trusted for most of her life had drugged her and invited strangers over to rape her while she was unconscious. Dozens of men were identified as participating in this assault organized by her own husband. This case forced people across the world to confront an uncomfortable reality. Most of the men involved weren't criminals living on the fringes of society. They were men that we daily talk to. They were ordinary men with ordinary life, neighbors, workers, fathers even. But in the middle of this nightmare, Giselle made a decision that would define the case. Her decision transformed the trial into something larger than a criminal case. It became a national reckoning about consent, responsibility, and the silence that often surrounds crimes like these. Today, Gisele Pelicot says she does not want to be remembered as a symbol or an icon. But her courage ensured that whatever happened in that quiet home would not remain hidden. And for many people, her voice became a reminder that even after the darkest betrayal, the truth can still come to light.